How could you be so selfish? My father's voice boomed through the spacious living room of their vacation home in Pinewood Lake. His face reddened as he paced, his frustration radiating off him in waves. Your sister needs that money for her new business venture. You have more than enough. I stood there frozen, the property tax bill clutched in my hands, the one they'd ambushed me with the moment I walked through the door. This was supposed to be a casual Sunday dinner. Instead, it had morphed into an interrogation about why I wasn't pulling my weight anymore. My name is Lauren Davis. At 33 years old, I've built a successful career as a self-taught day trader. I wasn't born into money. Everything I have I earned, through years of sleepless nights, poring over market patterns, taking calculated risks, and making sacrifices my family never seemed to notice. And for the past 5 years, I've been paying their way without complaint, covering the property taxes on their lake house, paying for Megan's car payments, funding family vacations, covering Mom's medical bills when insurance wouldn't. And not once did I ask for anything in return, because I thought that's what family did. I was wrong. Dad, I've been paying for everything for years. My voice was calm, but my hands trembled as I gripped the tax bill. The property taxes, Megan's business trips, Mom's medical bills. And I've never complained. But I can't keep doing this forever. Across the room, my mother sat silently on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. She wouldn't even look at me. That hurt more than my father's shouting. We gave you everything growing up, Dad spat, ignoring my words completely. And now that we need you, you're abandoning us? While your sister is trying to make something of herself. Something about the way he said, your sister, made my stomach churn. And then out of the corner of my eye I saw it. An envelope, partially hidden under a stack of magazines on the coffee table. A familiar, official-looking document peeking out. I glimpsed the bold print. Trust fund. Nicole Walsh. My pulse stalled. I reached for it. Lauren, that's private, my father snapped. But it was too late. The truth was in my hands. My hands shook as my eyes skimmed the document. And then I saw it, $350,000. A trust fund for Megan. Only Megan. With future contributions guaranteed. My breath caught in my throat. This was the same father who told me there was never enough to help with my college tuition. The same father who watched me work multiple jobs while studying, never once offering financial support. The same parents who now expected me to bankroll their luxury lifestyle, while secretly setting my sister up for life. I swallowed the lump of betrayal rising in my throat. When were you going to tell me about this? I whispered. My father snatched the papers from my hands, stuffing them back into the envelope as if he could shove the truth away just as easily. You weren't supposed to see that. His words landed like a slap. I stared at him, feeling something inside me crack, then break completely. I had spent my entire life rationalizing why Megan always got more attention, more support, more opportunity. And now? Now I had proof. I guess that explains why you never helped with my student loans. My voice was flat, emotionless. But inside, I was burning. The pattern had been there all along, hadn't it? Megan got dance lessons. I was told to focus on academics. She got a brand new car for her 16th birthday. I took the bus until I saved enough to buy a used Honda. She attended a private university, fully funded by our parents. I pieced together scholarships, worked 30 hours a week at a coffee shop, and barely scraped by. I had never wanted to believe it. I told myself they were struggling financially, that circumstances had changed, that it wasn't favoritism, it was just bad luck. But that was a lie. I wasn't the priority. I never had been. Sweetheart. My mother finally spoke, her voice soft, too soft. That tone. The one she used when she wanted to smooth things over. When she wanted to manipulate. You have to understand. I laughed, the sound dry and hollow. I understood perfectly. For years I had been their personal safety net. A bank account with no overdraft limit. A crutch they could lean on while making sure Megan never had to struggle. I looked down at the tax bill in my hand, the latest in a long line of demands. And for the first time I didn't feel obligated. I felt done. My father, still clutching the trust fund paperwork, narrowed his eyes. We expect you to help because you can afford it, Lauren. And I expect you to manage your own damn finances. His nostrils flared. You owe us. Something icy settled in my chest. I owe you, I echoed. He nodded. After everything we've done for you. I stared at him for a long, painful moment. Then slowly I reached into my bag, pulled out my checkbook, and ripped out one last check. Held it out. This is for the final property tax payment. After this, you're on your own. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched into fists. But I didn't care anymore. I wasn't his ATM. I wasn't his backup plan. I was free. And as I walked out the door, I didn't look back. Your sister needs more help than you do. You've always been so independent, so capable. We're proud of how well you've done on your own. The twisted logic stole the breath from my lungs. I wasn't being punished for failing. I was being punished for succeeding. All those times I had struggled, begged for help, they had the money. It was just never meant for me. A hollow ache settled deep in my chest. All those times I asked for help, I said, my voice eerily calm as the memories crashed into me. When I was in college, working 2 jobs, barely sleeping. When my car broke down and I couldn't afford the repairs. When I needed a security deposit for my first apartment and had nowhere else to turn. And every time, their answer had been the same. We wish we could help, sweetheart, but things are tight right now. But things weren't tight. They were just saving it for Megan. Dad shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. Investment decisions aren't that simple, Louise. We had to think about the future. I let out a slow, deliberate breath. Just not my future. The words hung between us. I thought about every check I'd written, every bill I'd covered. $8,700 in annual property taxes for 5 straight years. $12,000 for a new roof last summer, when they claimed they were struggling. $17,680 in Megan's car payments. $8,200 for Mom's medical expenses. $22,450 in family vacations that were nothing more than veiled cash grabs. $103,830. Gone. All while they'd been quietly securing Megan's future. Dad cleared his throat and slid the bill across the coffee table. The property taxes are due next month. And the Homeowners Association increased their fees again. I stared at him. Unbelievable. Even after everything I just discovered, he still expected me to pay up. The audacity was staggering. Something shifted inside me, something final, irreversible. I had been played for a fool. But that ended today. I'll take care of it, I said quietly, reaching for the bill. Dad visibly relaxed, mistaking my tone for compliance. But he missed what was in my eyes. The drive back to Portland was a blur. The snow-capped mountains that usually calmed me now felt like silent witnesses to my humiliation. I had been such an idiot. Once home, I ignored my ringing phone. Undoubtedly Dad calling to make sure I wouldn't back out, and pulled out my laptop. With shaking hands, I opened a folder I had meticulously maintained for years, but never thought I'd actually need. Financial contributions, family. A spreadsheet filled my screen. Every transfer, every payment, every favor I'd covered over the last 5 years. And now it felt like evidence. My phone pinged. Megan. Dad says you're being difficult about the taxes. Don't be selfish, Louise. I laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. Of course she took their side. Why wouldn't she? She had been the beneficiary of their favoritism her entire life. Another text. Dad. We're counting on you for those taxes. Don't let us down. No thank you. No acknowledgement of the $100,000 plus I'd already given. Just another demand. As if I were nothing more than a bank account with a pulse. I stared at my screen, heart-pounding, realization sinking in like cold steel. They never saw me as family. I was a funding source, nothing more. The next morning I called in sick to work. Then, without hesitation, I grabbed my car keys and drove straight to Nathan Cohen's office. Nathan had been my financial advisor for the last 3 years, the one who helped me build my investment portfolio when I started making serious money. Today I was going to learn how to cut them off. For good. This is quite a list, Joseph murmured, scanning the spreadsheet of financial contributions I'd compiled. His eyes flickered with something between disbelief and quiet anger as he reached the final total. He set the papers down and removed his glasses. $118,745. And you've never asked for repayment. I swallowed hard. They're family. The words felt hollow. I wanted to help. Joseph leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Louise, your generosity is admirable, but this is unsustainable. You're not just helping them, you're enabling them. This isn't healthy. For them or for you. I exhaled slowly, my hands tightening around the edges of my notebook. I know that now, I admitted. My voice felt steadier than I expected. I just discovered they've been funneling money into a trust fund for my sister, all while letting me shoulder every financial burden without a second thought. Joseph's jaw tightened. That changes things. For the next 2 hours we formulated a plan. I needed documentation, everything in black and white. Notarized statements, bank transfers, receipts. Proof that I wasn't the selfish, ungrateful daughter they'd surely paint me as when the money stopped. I want them to see the reality of what I've done for them, I said. I want them to understand what happens when that support disappears. Joseph studied me for a long moment. Are you sure you want to go down this road? Family conflicts over money can get ugly fast. I thought about the trust fund document, the years of sleepless nights, the property tax bill my father had slid across the table like I was some household accountant instead of his daughter. I met Joseph's gaze head-on. I'm sure. For the first time in years, when it came to my family, I felt something I never had before. Power. The forensic accountant's office smelled like freshly printed paper and quiet efficiency. Logan Brooks sat across from me, surrounded by neatly stacked files, my files, meticulously organized over the past week. Your documentation is impressive, Logan noted, flipping through a binder. Most people don't keep records this detailed. I let out a humorless chuckle. Day trading forces you to be meticulous. Every number has to add up. Well, he said, sliding a document across the desk. Here's the final tally. I took a deep breath and looked down. $118,745. My stomach twisted, even though I had already known the number. $14,915 of that is lost investment opportunity, Logan added. If that money had been put into your portfolio instead of funneled into family expenses, this is what it would have grown to. I nodded slowly, letting the weight of it sink in. The betrayal felt sharper when quantified. What now? I asked. Logan leaned back in his chair. That depends on what you want. If you're seeking legal restitution, we could build a case, though family financial matters get complicated without written agreements. If you just want closure or leverage, we can prepare a full financial statement. The second option, I said without hesitation. For now. As Logan prepared the documents, my phone buzzed. I glanced down. Dad. Haven't received the tax payment yet. The due date is approaching. I stared at the message, my pulse steady. Megan. Dad says you're being difficult about money. After all they've done for you? Really, Louise? I silenced my phone without responding. Let them wonder. 3 days later, the notarized financial statement arrived in my inbox, breaking down every cent I had contributed. Categorized, dated, undeniable. Nathan Cohen, my financial advisor, had even included a verification of lost investment opportunity. The evidence was irrefutable. That evening, as I sat in my apartment reviewing the final details, my phone rang. Mom. I took a slow breath before answering. Hello. Her voice was calm, rehearsed. Louise, your father is concerned about the property tax payment. There it was. No small talk. No checking in. Just straight to the ask. The due date is next week. I know when it's due, Mom. A pause. Well, will you be handling it? You've always been so reliable about these things. Reliable. That word had kept me financially tethered to them for 5 years. Reliable meant obligated. Reliable meant expected. I closed my eyes, feeling something settle deep in my chest. Not this time. No. Silence. What do you mean, no? She finally asked. I'm not paying the taxes anymore, I said evenly. Or any other family expenses. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken disbelief. Then the shift, the panic. But we're counting on you. The desperation in her voice should have hurt. Instead, it felt like confirmation. The money's already allocated elsewhere. To Megan's trust fund, you mean? I let the words settle between us, heavy with the weight of their meaning. A beat of silence. Then a quiet, shaky inhale. Your father told me you saw that. She sounded tired, like someone whose secrets had finally caught up to them. Louise, you have to understand. I cut her off. I do understand, Mom. More than ever. And that was exactly why I was done. I understand, I said, my voice unnervingly calm. I understand that I've contributed nearly $120,000 to this family over the past 5 years, while you and Dad have told me over and over again that there wasn't enough money to help with my education or housing. I understand that while I was financing your lifestyle, you were securing Megan's future. That's not fair, my mother protested weakly. I exhaled slowly, years of unspoken resentment settling into sharp, undeniable truth. No, it's not. I let the weight of the words hang between us before delivering the final blow. And I'm done. I ended the call before she could respond, turned off my phone and sat in silence. The real storm was coming. My father wouldn't take this lying down. He had never seen my financial support as generosity, only obligation. I woke up with an unexpected sense of clarity. No dread, no second-guessing. Just purpose. Step 1. I opened my laptop and canceled the automatic payment for Megan's car. Step 2. I removed myself as an authorized payer on all family accounts, insurance, utilities, even the emergency fund I'd quietly built for my parents. Step 3. I transferred $120,000 from my brokerage account into a new private investment fund labeled simply, My Future. For the first time in years, I felt something lift from my shoulders. A burden I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. By noon, my phone was vibrating relentlessly. When I finally turned it on during my lunch break, a flood of notifications filled the screen. I scrolled through them with a detached curiosity, as if watching someone else's drama unfold. Megan, 7 missed calls, 5 texts. What the hell, Louise? The bank says my car payment was declined. Are you trying to ruin my credit score? I have plans this weekend. Dad is furious. Fix this now. I didn't reply. My father's messages were even more direct. Call me immediately. This is unacceptable behavior. You cannot abandon your responsibilities to this family. Responsibilities. That word made me pause. Not generosity. Not thank you. Just the expectation that I owed them. I placed my phone face down and turned back to my work. The markets were volatile today. I needed to focus. It was after closing my positions that I finally listened to my mother's voicemail. Her voice was shaky but practiced, the usual tremble of concern layered over quiet manipulation. Louise, please. Your father is beside himself. The property tax notice came with a late fee warning. Megan can't make her car payment. She'll lose her vehicle. We don't understand why you're doing this. Whatever's upset you, we can talk about it. Please call us back. No mention of the trust fund. No acknowledgement of years of my financial support. Just pressure wrapped in a plea. I was crafting a measured response when my intercom buzzed. Ms. Walsh. The building security guard's voice crackled through the speaker. Your father is here, demanding to see you. He's quite insistent. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. Tell him I'm not available. He's saying he won't leave until you come down. I sighed. Then call the police if he refuses to leave. A pause. Very well, ma'am. 20 minutes later, my phone pinged with a text. Unknown number. Jason, my cousin just saw Uncle Jason being escorted from your building by security. What's going on? Are you okay? Jason and I weren't particularly close. I hesitated before replying. I'm fine. Family financial disagreement. His response came almost instantly. About time you stood up to them. The way they've treated you versus. Megan has been wrong for years. I stared at the screen, stunned. I'd always assumed no one noticed. That the favoritism, the expectations, the entitlement had been invisible to everyone but me. But someone had seen. And that was all the validation I needed. My doorbell rang at 7 p.m. I checked the peephole. Megan. Arms crossed, foot tapping impatiently, furious. I opened the door but didn't step aside. What do you want? What do I want? She repeated incredulously. I want you to explain why you're suddenly acting like a psycho. My car payment bounced. Dad says you're refusing to pay the taxes on the lake house. Correct. Megan's nostrils flared. Why? What's your problem? I held her gaze. The problem is that I've contributed almost $120,000 to this family over the last 5 years, while Dad has been secretly funding a trust for you. A flicker of surprise. Then guilt. Then defensive anger. That's different, she snapped. The trust is for my future. I need that security. And I don't. Her eyes darted away. You've always been the smart one, she muttered. You've got your fancy trading career. I'm still trying to find my path. I let out a sharp laugh. At 31, Megan? While I pay your car payments and fund family vacations. She flushed. You've never complained before. Because I didn't know I was being manipulated. I shot back. I didn't know that while I was draining my accounts to help the family, Dad was building a $350,000 trust fund for you. She froze. How do you know the exact? I saw the document. A beat of silence. Then a shift. Megan's voice softened as she reached for my arm. Look, Louise, I understand you're upset. But we're family. We need your help. Dad says without the tax payment, they might lose the lake house. I stepped back before she could touch me. That's not my problem anymore. Her eyes narrowed. You'd let them lose the vacation home? They have options, I said. They could use some of your trust fund. Her face hardened. That's not fair. I smiled.
No, Megan.
Nothing about this has been fair. And with that I closed the door. I closed the door gently but firmly in Megan's face. 2 weeks passed. The property tax deadline came and went without another word from me. I maintained radio silence with my parents and Megan, redirecting my focus to work, my investments, and for once my own future. Joseph had helped me restructure my portfolio. Now that I wasn't hemorrhaging money to my family, the difference was staggering. More than enough to increase my retirement contributions, plan international travel, even consider buying a vacation property of my own. The silence was blissful. Until it wasn't. One afternoon, an email from Uncle Richard landed in my inbox. Subject: What's going on with Jason and the lake house? Louise just heard from your father. He's asking me for a $10,000 loan to cover property taxes and penalties. Said something about you refusing to help the family anymore. This doesn't sound like you. I stared at the screen, then let out a bitter laugh. So this was his solution. Instead of touching Megan's sacred trust fund, my father was now soliciting money from other relatives. I took a breath, then carefully composed my reply. I attached a PDF summary of my financial contributions to the family over the last 5 years. Every expense, every payment, every sacrifice. Then I laid out the trust fund situation in clear, irrefutable terms. Uncle Richard's response came within the hour. Holy hell, Louise. I had no idea. No one did. Your dad has been telling everyone how he's been struggling to help both his daughters equally. This changes things. The truth was spreading. The next day my cousin Jason called. Louise, you need to know something, he said, his voice urgent. What now? I asked, already bracing myself. Dad's organizing a family meeting at your parents' house this weekend. A slow exhale. Of course he is. And the agenda? He's calling it a discussion about Louise abandoning the family. Jason sighed. He's rallying everyone against you, trying to guilt you into not just resuming payments, but covering all the late fees and penalties too. The sheer audacity of it left me momentarily speechless. They're framing it as you deliberately damaging the family legacy, Jason added. I closed my eyes, pulse steady despite the rage simmering beneath my skin. Are you going? I asked. Yes. And so are you, Jason said firmly. You need to set the record straight. I'll back you up. I hesitated. Confronting my father with the entire family present would be brutal. But maybe it was necessary. I'll be there. On Saturday I dressed with precision. A tailored black pantsuit that made me feel like I was walking into a corporate negotiation, not a family ambush. I wasn't here to plead. I was here to present facts. I arrived at my parents' house with my briefcase in hand. Inside it a complete financial dossier from Victor, including notarized statements and calculations of lost investment opportunity. The living room fell silent the moment I stepped inside. My father stood by the fireplace mid-speech, his audience a mix of aunts, uncles, and cousins, their expressions ranging from confusion to concern. Megan sat beside my mother on the couch, both looking uncomfortable. "Louise," my father said, recovering quickly, "I'm glad you decided to join us. We were just discussing the family vacation home situation." I tilted my head slightly. "I'm sure you were." I set my briefcase on the coffee table. "And I'm sure you've provided everyone with all the relevant financial information." His jaw tightened. "We're discussing your refusal to meet family obligations." I smiled cold practiced. "Interesting." I unlatched the briefcase. "Because I have 5 years of financial records showing over $118,000 in family obligations I've already met." The room murmured. My father's face reddened. "Money that apparently wasn't available to help with my education or housing," I continued smoothly, "but was somehow available for Megan's trust fund." A sharp ripple of whispers. Aunt Teresa, never one for subtlety, frowned. "What trust fund?" I looked at my father, giving him the chance to explain himself. He remained silent. So I passed copies of the summary document around the room. "For the past 5 years," I said evenly, "I've paid the property taxes on the lake house, covered Megan's car payments, funded family vacations and more, totaling nearly $120,000. I let that sink in before delivering the final blow. During this same period, my parents established a $350,000 trust fund, exclusively for Megan." The room erupted. Gasps, protests, sharp accusations. My father's face turned a deep shade of red. "These are private family matters," he thundered. "Exactly," Uncle Richard cut in, rising from his seat. "Family matters. And in this family, we should treat our children equally." I hadn't expected that level of support. As the room fractured into heated discussions, my father's gaze locked onto mine. And in his eyes, I saw something I'd never witnessed before. Fear. Not anger. Not control. Just fear. His carefully constructed narrative was crumbling. And behind that fear, something even more shocking: respect. The aftermath: the family meeting ended with my father storming out and my mother tearfully following. Megan sat frozen on the couch, avoiding eye contact with everyone. The rest of the family lingered, flipping through the financial statements, processing the truth. Aunt Teresa sighed, shaking her head. "I had no idea it was this bad." Uncle Richard, still fuming, muttered, "The lake house has been in our family for decades. If you've been paying those taxes, you should have some ownership stake." I blinked. That had never even crossed my mind. "I don't want the house," I admitted. "I just wanted them to recognize the unfairness of it all." Jason placed a hand on my shoulder. His voice was quiet but firm. "Recognition isn't enough, Louise." 3 days after the family meeting, my phone lit up with a text from my father.
No apology.
No acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Just 4 curt words. "The property taxes are due." I stared at the screen, incredulous. After everything that had been exposed, he still expected me to step in, pay up, and keep quiet. That evening my phone rang again. An unexpected call from my mother. "Louise," she began, her voice unusually hesitant. "Your father isn't handling this well. The lake house means everything to him," she added, as if that explained everything. I exhaled slowly. More than treating his daughters equally? Her silence was deafening. She knew the answer. They both did. "Mom, I've contributed nearly $120,000 to this family," I said, voice calm but unyielding. "Meanwhile, Dad set up a $350,000 trust fund for Megan without ever offering me similar support. The disparity is glaring." For a moment I thought she would deflect, make excuses. But instead she sighed. "I know," she admitted softly. "I've always known it wasn't right. A confession but not a resolution. But your father makes the financial decisions." I finished the sentence for her. I could hear the unspoken regret in her silence. But regret wasn't enough. "I understand, Mom." My voice was steady. "But this is where it stops." A message without words the next morning. I texted my father back. No words. Just an attachment. A photograph of the complete, notarized financial record of my contributions over the past 5 years, the final total circled in red. $118,745. Every expense. Every sacrifice. Every time I had stepped up while they built a future for Megan. No accompanying message was necessary. The numbers spoke for themselves. An hour later my phone rang. I expected my father's angry voice. Instead it was Megan. She sounded shaken. "Louise," she asked, almost breathless. "Dad just showed me the documentation you sent. Is it really that much? Over $118,000. "Yes," I confirmed. "Every penny. Documented and verified by a forensic accountant." There was a long pause. "I had no idea," she finally admitted. "Dad always told me you were just helping a little here and there. That you had extra money and didn't mind." Her voice cracked. For the first time I heard something real from her. Guilt. Recognition. "He never said you were covering major expenses while he was building my trust fund." She swallowed hard. "Louise, she faltered. "I don't know what to say. I feel terrible." I sat with the silence, letting her process it. "It's not entirely your fault," I finally said. "Dad created the situation. But I benefited from it," she said bitterly. "And I never questioned it. I just assumed I deserved the help." Another long silence. Then Megan surprised me. "I'm going to fix this." Her voice had a steel edge I'd never heard before. "It's not right." Before I could ask what she meant, she hung up. The shift the next day, I received an email from my father's attorney. Attached was formal documentation. The property taxes on the lake house had been paid in full, along with a legally binding amendment to the ownership. I now owned a 25% stake in the property. A second attachment explained the details. Megan had insisted on using funds from her trust to cover the taxes and legal fees for the ownership transfer. I stared at the screen, stunned. Not just because she had followed through, but because of what it meant. An acknowledgement. A course correction. A text popped up on my phone. "My father. This wasn't necessary. Family helps family." Even now, he didn't get it. Even now, he refused to see that help had only ever gone one way. I didn't respond. A minute later, another text. "My mother this time. Your father is struggling with this. But I want you to know. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. I should have done the same years ago." I blinked. I hadn't expected that. A different kind of inheritance that evening. Megan called again. "I've asked Dad to split the trust fund equally between us." I sat up straighter. "What?" "He refused at first." She exhaled sharply. "But Uncle Richard and Aunt Teresa backed me up. They called him out. He's meeting with his financial advisor tomorrow to make the arrangements." I closed my eyes. Not because of the money, but because of what it represented. Fairness. Acknowledgement. Respect. For the first time, the weight I'd carried for years truly lifted. Not because I'd won, but because they could no longer pretend. The truth was out. And it had changed everything. "Thank you, Megan," I said sincerely. She let out a small, shaky laugh. "No," she replied. "Thank you. For finally making us face the truth."